Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 6 o'clock, and I'm going to call this Town of Morristown Selectboard special meeting to order. It is, as I said, 6 o'clock, Wednesday, March 26th, 2025. Do we have any agenda changes or additions?
No.
Okay. So our only agenda item is under new business, and that's an update on the Jersey Heights 3-acre rural stormwater project. I know Tyler Mumley's here to do a presentation, and welcome. Thank you for coming. And I'm going to turn this meeting over to Brent and Tyler.
So thanks everybody for coming out. We wanted to update you on the current status of Jersey Heights 3-acre stormwater and the corresponding ARPA grant that we've secured. Reporting on the ARPA grant is due March 31st. Tyler has obtained some estimates based upon 30% completion that he'll get into some details about. And so far we're on schedule. So unless anybody has immediate questions, I'll turn it over to Tyler, and he can go over some additional information to inform you. And then we really need to make a decision to meet the next steps for reporting. We have an important deadline coming up on May 1st for a 60% design completion. And we're required to meet with the landowners and other stakeholders to discuss the planned projects the first 7 days of each month. So we won't necessarily have a select board publicly noticed meeting every time, but I will start sending out emails to people, and we will record even if there isn't a select board open meeting, so that people that can attend can watch it. So we'll be giving options, because I know that as the summer gets closer, not all of you will be interested in coming here to attend, but we're required to do that as per the ARPA grant. So are there any initial questions before I turn the floor over to Tyler to provide updates?
I'm just going to interject for a second, and I meant to do this. Laura Streets is on Zoom. I just want to make sure. Laura, can you hear the conversation? Laura, are you there?
Yes, I can hear.
Great, thank you. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
So I don't know the ARPA grant, is that state money, is that?
Might need to come up to the microphone, Leah, I'm sorry. Just for those online and for the recording as well.
You can just stand next to it, yeah, that's fine.
So, yeah, I'll hear it, Washington. The ARPA grant, I don't know if that's state money, federal money, but is that money physically here and available?
Yeah, so what I've been told is this is ARPA money from a couple of years ago. And so it's in the state coffers, but it's a great question, right? I mean, there's been some unusual events occurring, so I've not heard any changes, and we'll continue to proceed, and I need to check in with the state regularly, so I'll be asking that question proactively rather than just assuming that they'll let me know if something strange is happening.
Thank you.
Great question. All right, unless anybody online have any initial questions? Okay, Tyler?
Hey, hi everybody, Tyler Mumley with Mumley Engineering. So we've been working on this project for a while, and as Brent said, we're kind of at a point in the project where we need to make some decisions about how exactly to move forward and get it done to stay in accordance with the ARPA timeline for the funding. There's been three kind of paths we've been looking at, and that's what I want to go over with everybody today. The first is utilization of what we've been referring to as the 30% plans These are plans that were completed years ago by other consultants through a grant program across the state of Vermont for these various 3-acre sites. And this is the plan we're looking at that's shown online, and I think many of you have probably seen this in the past, but it includes underground stormwater chambers that are put into the ground and covered back up. And their purpose is to collect stormwater and allow that stormwater to infiltrate into the ground, and then if there's any runoff, exit out and get back into the regular stormwater system, the regular waterways of the state.
Tyler, can I just ask you to turn that easel a little bit? I assume you're going to be pointing at some stuff, so that's fine. That's good. I know the audience needs to see it too.
So I'll come back to that. The second option that we tried to explore was a thing called impact fees. There's a potential out there for the ability for people dealing with a 3-acre site stormwater permitting rules to essentially show justification that they couldn't physically meet the rules with any actual construction on site and simply just pay money to the state. The third option was some other alternative. Instead of one big stormwater chamber system, maybe it's different collection systems in different areas for ponds or other stormwater features like disconnection, which I'll go over a little bit. So the idea of that third option was that maybe it's easier and cheaper than something as large as this design was. So those are the 3 things we've been trying to consider, and we have updates on those. Regarding the 30% design, again, it was a 30% design, wasn't fully vetted, but it did initially appear to meet all the stormwater requirements that the state has for the Jersey Heights subdivision, meaning it could treat 100% of the water quality requirements for at least half of the entire subdivision area. That is the requirement for 3 acres, these 3-acre sites. And so what we decided to do was to send this out for bid and get some price quotes on it, just to get an idea of what we're dealing with as far as a price. Years ago, there was a cost estimate that was completed by the other consulting firm. And that number was approximately $273,000 to construct what they had designed for this stormwater chamber system. We sent it out, we got 2 bids back, and the lowest of those was $369,000. So we're talking almost $100,000 difference. Some of the reasons why that price came in larger was obviously over time, right? Prices have gone up. Also, it was a 30% design. And since then, we have done more analysis engineering. We completed test pits in Dale's backyard. We gave further consideration to the design and how it would work, and we made some modifications to the design in order to get it out to contractors based on this updated information. And we think that the modifications we had made added to the scope, added to the level of construction that would have to happen in order to get this project done. So that's a result in a higher cost. When you consider, do you want me to go over the cost breakdown and how that might work, or do you want to?
Well, the construction amount that Tyler mentioned was a base amount, and then they threw in a 25% contingency in the total cost. So you add in that 25% contingency, and it's not as bad as that $100,000 delta. And then we're able to use funds from engineering, legal, and otherwise, if we don't use them in the process. So we're pretty close to that number. My estimate is approximately $20,000 to $30,000 over right now for construction. In addition to the time period that's gone by, even though there was that 25% contingency, the plans correct me if I'm wrong, Tyler. The plans didn't have a soil sample, and they didn't necessarily do a quality analysis of the topography, but I'll let you discuss those things.
I guess you wanna, as far as like what the outcome is, as far as like what this means, as far as the price, the cost difference goes.
The price difference right now isn't substantial, and previously when I provided quotes, the budgeted amount was $439,900. The ARPA grant is for 72% of that, which is $316,675. So the cost to the town and to the residents is, based upon the initial quotes, is $123,225. Previously, when I've given presentations, I've used $180,000 to calculate potential examples of costs on a monthly basis to residents. So as far as what we've reported in the past as to cost, previously I've said, if everybody had the same percentage, it'd be rough, and we amortize at 5.5% over a 15-year term, that each resident would be looking at $16.61 a month cost for the 15 years. And we're coming in right around there, except since then, we've shared information about what we've done is we've analyzed the pro rata portion of impervious surface per lot. So there's some of you that are at 0.5%, most of you are at 1%, and 3 or 4 are at 2%. And that information has been provided at the town clerk's office, and if anybody hasn't received it, I can email it to you or give you a copy even tonight. But essentially we're on target, even though the construction cost is coming in higher at the moment. And we won't know until we move forward with more of like a 60% completion about where we're really at. Which contractor was it that came in with a low bid?
Walker Construction.
Okay.
And MSI also provided a quote, and they were at 390.
Yeah.
So they were similar, pretty close as far as a bid that large goes, so that was good news.
Brent, can you just go over those numbers again, starting with that 316,000? You threw out three numbers there, 316 and 4 something.
Sure. So originally, the estimate was $272,900 for construction, and that's including the 20% contingency.
Yep.
$31,000 for design engineering, and $38,000 for bid and construction engineering, $10,000 for legal, and then an $88,000 COVID-based escalation factor cost. So the total estimated cost of this project back when it was originally conducted was $439,900. So with the 20%, it's actually 25% contingency. It was, is it 272.9? I left the paper in my office.
The construction aspect was 272.9,
Right.
but the total was 439,900.
Get that.
And then the loan, the grant is 72%, which is
Right.
316.
Okay, great, thank you.
But based on the $369,000 quote from Walker, we're comparing that against essentially a $245,000 chunk of the grant that can go towards construction. And there could be more that could come from unused funds for engineering, construction bidding, and legal fees. So that chunk is $123,000, so that's essentially the shortfall. But a portion of that is on the town. The town is responsible for 34% of the impervious surface. The landowners are 66% of the impervious surfaces. So of that $123,000 shortfall, 66% to the landowners is about 81,000. And then across the 64 individual landowners, and that includes all the condo owners, so that's a equal distribution. That's about 1,215 each. But you gotta take that into account with the tax assessment and what'd you say, 5.5% in 15 years?
Estimated 5.5 based upon interest rates at the time.
Now, could somebody pay up front?
Could you,
If it's going to be like $1,500, so could homeowners pay up front, or do they have to pay over 15 years?
that's something we can discuss with finance and town clerk's office, and if we, before we have to go out for a loan for those people that can't afford to pay all up front, if we know what we can, immediately pay down, so that we don't need to, we can lower the loan amount. That's something that I think is feasible, but I want to be able to confirm that with town clerk and the finance director, Tina.
The reason why I ask that, if a homeowner or a condo owner decides to sell, it's going to make a difference to the buyer if they know they're on the tap for 15 years.
That's a good question, Lee.
So, so that wraps up, option one. It's, and then the next steps would be, go ahead. I'll take questions.
How does the,
Just state your name for the record.
Chris Myers, 108 Jersey Way. A lot of the stormwater is not gonna go into that, most likely. Where, does it matter? I mean, how much of the stormwater does have to get captured by that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, whatever we do, the requirements for the 3-acre rule is that at least 50% of all the impervious surfaces are rooftops, walkways, driveways, and roadways, sidewalks, anything that, water doesn't get through. So we have to capture the runoff from 50% of all the impervious surfaces and treat it to 100% of the water quality standard. So this, I don't have it here. I'm sorry, there is one more map that I wish I had with me. But this is the area of the property. And that proposed stormwater chamber is located about right here, okay? The way that this would get 50% of the property is that there's an existing stormwater culvert system in this area and actually wraps around the condos. It comes down here and it goes out to the brook. And this proposed stormwater chamber system is very deep, and it would intercept that piping system and grab that stormwater runoff and then send it to the stormwater treatment system and then allow any overflow to get back into the piping system. There's also a proposed pipe to come between the two houses. Dale, that's your house? Right there in the corner, correct?
Yeah.
And then, so a pipe between the two buildings to come in, because there's another existing stormwater culvert pipe system along Foss Street, kind of like running through the middle of those front yards. And we would intercept that as well and pull that water into the stormwater chamber. That allows us to pick up additional areas all through here to get into there. So between intercepting both of those storm pipes and getting the water into the chambers, that accounts for 50% of the impervious areas of the property. Does that make sense?
Excuse me, Tyler. Does this, Lee Levere, this lot where it's all going, is that still owned by Menage?
My understanding is yes.
So do we have to buy it from him?
No, just get an easement.
Kyle, one more question if you don't mind. When you talk about existing piping that you're gonna incorporate in this, what's the lifespan? Does anybody know how good that existing piping is and can it hold up for the next reasonable period of time?
That's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head, but we have plans for it. I mean, it is old, it was installed back then,
Mhm.
but I don't know the type. I don't know if it's, our reinforced concrete pipe or ductile iron or plastic. The assumption is that it is good enough, and it has, as far as we know, we haven't seen any failures of it. But as part of the project, when they open up the earth and they find it, that's gonna be something that has to be determined.
So this plan would include examining this existing piping and making sure that it is satisfactory for continued use.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it might be something that we wanna address, ahead of time before we go further. It's just that pipe is very deep.
Okay.
So, it'll take a lot of work
Well,
to make that happen, but.
is there an opportunity to camera it?
Yeah, there's accessibility there. There are manholes out there, on Howard's lot, so that's an option.
It doesn't make any sense to tie it all into a brand new system and 3 years down the road have something fail.
Yeah, I don't think anybody in the room wants that.
Thank you, that's a good question.
So I have a question on the other chart, if you flip
Just-
around.
Just identify yourself, sorry.
Dale Touchette. So that red line is coming from the infiltration system. Is that going to be new, or is that already existing?
That's new, that's proposed.
So that would all have to be dug up right beside my house?
Yes.
Okay.
And repaired, correct? No.
So,
Her land would be returned seeded and
correct, yes. But, in this, with, one of the, we're trying to weigh the pros and cons of everything. And, with this proposed project, you're certainly the most affected.
Yeah, I am, definitely.
I'm just saying, I'm aware of that.
No, there's no getting around that.
Yeah,
So it says here, so this would all be new here, this beehive grate. Well, it's all new. There's never been a grate there.
correct.
There's definitely a grate there. But it says remove existing culvert that would lead from this manhole or whatever you want to call it, grate, I guess. So that means you would be digging across my whole lawn?
No, I think you dig a hole here, you would dig a trench along this red line, and you would install a new pipe, and right there you install a new manhole to intercept this existing line. And then what they would do is they would cap and plug this and just abandon the remainder of that storm pipe.
So you would abandon this, because right now the water does flow from there into this existing
Right.
culvert, which again says relocate existing 18-inch culvert, which goes across my driveway with a nice stone wall. So
Yeah.
you're gonna be replacing all my stone wall and everything? Because you wouldn't have to.
30% design, right? So these are not fully cooked, right? As we get into this, there would be further site inspection. We try to work with a little disturbance as possible. But right now, because of the way these pipes would exit into the stream, into the brook, it may be necessary to redo that pipe there.
Yeah,
But we
that's
can-
that's huge. I mean, that whole stone wall goes, yeah, we'd be replacing that.
Understood.
Okay.
Is there any other questions on this. Actually, I guess I was saying, so if we were to move forward, if this is our option, you know, to that point, we would just continue to refine this design, and finalize it, bring it to 60% design, flush out everything, and then continue to move forward with that design, and this is what we would submit to the state for the permit in order to move forward. So moving along, the second option I talked about was called impact fees. And I'll make this short and sweet. We made our best compelling case to the state. We did that because the way the impact fees work out is that we would have had enough funds from the grant to cover the impact fees. So we basically tried to make a case that says, hey, this construction is too much, you know, it's gonna involve easements, you know, it doesn't make sense, and we threw as much at them as we could, and they basically came back and said, too bad. We're aware of this 30% design that could potentially meet your requirements, and you're not allowed to just pay impact fees. So unfortunately, that got thrown out, but I wanted to bring that up because, you know, we thought it might be a viable option, but the state said, no thank you. The third option is alternatives to this. We throw this out and we consider other alternatives. One of the reasons we started considering other alternatives is because we knew that the stormwater chambers were expensive, they were gonna be a huge amount of work, huge impact to that area, to those residents in that area. And we said, hey, what else is there? And so there's really kind of two things that could happen as an alternative. That includes essentially more smaller ponds throughout the subdivision and/or a thing called disconnection. I'll speak to disconnection first. Disconnection is this, I don't want to say theory because it is real, but it's the idea that like water running off of your roof, which is minimally polluted, can be dispersed over a specific area of your land that meets a certain requirement for area and slope and is vegetated, and the state accepts that as a method of treatment. It makes sense, right? And so what we did is we looked at essentially all of the houses in the subdivision, and we drew a bunch of lines and said, hey, you know, which houses have potentially areas on their property that could accommodate and meet the requirement for disconnection from their rooftops. And we did that essentially for everywhere. And that's what all the red lines are. Now this is rough, this is conceptual, and this has not been vetted with a site-specific site walk to like make sure that everybody's roofs are exactly the way they look on aerial imagery, and that people's yards are exactly the way they are laid out on aerial imagery in the topo. So it's likely that a lot of these are not real options, but we try to shoot for the stars here. As conceptually designed, that is only 16% of what we would need to meet the state requirement. Okay, so this involves almost the majority of all the houses, but yet only gets us 16% of the way. But it's a consideration, it's something that we, you know, okay, that's something to consider. So just keep that in your brain. There's also the ability to do disconnection of sidewalks. If sidewalks have sidewalks have enough vegetation directly adjacent that doesn't go into a drainage way, they can also disconnect sidewalks and get credit for that. There's potential for up to 10% of what we need overall doing that with the sidewalks, but again, that has to be vetted with site visits and, you know, confirm that those are available. So that's disconnection. The other option, back to disconnection. It's great because it doesn't require costly construction. It's not good because it requires everybody that would have disconnection as per the plan would have to essentially be covered by an easement or agreement that your land is part of the permit, that you have disconnection on your roof, and that you're subject to yearly inspections of your property to make sure that things haven't changed and that the disconnection design of your rooftop is still in place. So that's something that would affect a lot of landowners with restrictions as far as that goes. The other aspect to the design alternative is multiple small ponds. And so what we did here on this plan, you can see the blue areas are areas that we identified. Again, this is rough and conceptual, and it's based on us looking at the topography of the land, trying to understand how the water flows and how it could be collected in collection areas, aka ponds. And then each of those ponds would provide treatment for that area. The design that we came up with these blue areas resulted in about 90% of what we would need to meet the state standard for the 3-acre rule. Okay, so, and again, that's not fully vetted, not fully fleshed out, and we would have to do site-specific analysis to make sure that this layout, this concept works. Further, we would have the next step if we move forward with this is we have to get out there and do test pits, essentially at all these locations, to confirm what the soils are like, so we could actually design whatever kind of pond we would need to design. In Vermont, under the state stormwater rules, to break it down in layman terms, you either have dry sandy soils and you can do a shallow infiltration swale or basin, or you don't have dry sandy soils and you have to construct what's called a constructed gravel wetland. And it's literally a man-made wetland that is an underdrain system with a layer of silty clay soils with hydric plants in them, and it is a man-made wetland. And it allows water to flow in and get treated through the artificial wetland, and then that treats the water. So depending on what we discover for soils on these locations, they could potentially be, just shallow, dry basin areas, or they could be gravel wetlands. So we wouldn't know that until we did that analysis. He beat you to it.
Chris Myers again. The current stormwater system has a lot of storm drains and stuff, especially around the condos. Would that go away if with this option, or I mean that's going into the gully there by Frost Street, right?
Yeah, one of the things we considered, one of the problems with that stormwater collection is that by the time it gets around the condos, it gets pretty deep, right? So it's hard to get that water that's deep in a pipe up to a surface pond. So the answer is yes and no. We wouldn't spend the time to get rid of that stormwater culvert system because it's so deep. We would, if anything, we would just leave it in place and it really wouldn't be used. However, we did look at, the potential of, instead of having the pipes back there in the ground, maybe a swale system around the condos and still make this area more of a centerpiece. It's just that it's kind of tight back there, as far as usable land and its lawns. We don't know if we can make those grades work. But again, this is a conceptual idea, and that's something that might come up, that like we could get a swale along here and capture more of this runoff, and maybe this pond gets a little larger in order to accommodate that. So again, this has to get fleshed out and exactly where these locations would be, but those are all considerations, and that's a good question.
So Tyler, just, do you have any idea, based on this concept, how it differs in terms of cost to the baffled system that you originally proposed?
Yeah, that's a great question. I had ballparked, 20 to 40,000, per location. We have about 6 of them. So I thought ballpark was that we would be under the grant amount to do this. That we're not talking about a lot of infrastructure here. We're talking about mostly earthwork to create pond areas. The idea of these pond areas is that they're using existing conveyance mechanisms, existing slopes, existing swales, existing culverts and stuff, to get the water to those locations, so that the construction work would mostly just be earthwork of manipulating the land to become a pond area.
So similar to Chris's question, conceivably anyways, if we did the sidewalk capture and the ponds, we can get 100% of what the state's asking us to do.
Yep, that was.
Do we have any idea what that sidewalk capture might cost?
Well, no, so that's $0. So the nice thing about the disconnection is that there's no construction costs associated with it.
It's
So
just an easement of allowing flow onto grass or
Yeah.
soil.
You're basically saying for somebody's house, for example, right here, that the runoff from the roof via a gutter system would have a point discharge, and the discharge of that gutter system would be over a 10-foot wide by 50-foot long vegetated lawn area that has a reasonable slope. So there has to be an agreement in place that area, that house is gonna remain that way, and that's how the disconnection of the rooftop is gonna work for all time. But it doesn't require construction, it just requires that that be established as existing conditions and that it doesn't change.
So I'm confused. If you said that if they did the stormwater retention ponds, that would meet 90% of the 50%. Is that how I understood that?
90% of the total, 100% of what we need to do.
Right, which is 50%.
50% of the property
Right.
at 100% water treatment.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you did just the sidewalks, which I think you said was 10%, and left the rooftops alone, and the stormwater retention, that would get you to the 100% of the 50%.
What you just said is correct, but you need to consider that this is conceptual
Right,
and not vetted, so you're gonna lose a lot of those percentages. My hope would be that this would get us 80-something percent, and these disconnections would get us the rest of the way.
Okay.
I think that 90% and the 16% and the 10%, those are, conceptual goals that we have, but I think it's gonna be lower than that when we're all said and done figuring this out.
in your experience,
But we would try to do what we need to do
right,
with these two things in order to get to 100% of the total treatment.
is there any negative impact to developing wetlands or stormwater retention ponds?
The negative impact, obviously, like to each of the landowners, there's gonna be those impacts, right? So there's just more landowners that are gonna have gravel wetlands in their front or backyards. And the disconnection that people will have, those restrictions on their property. The other consideration is the yearly inspections. So this stormwater system has to be inspected yearly. I would say that this is gonna be more difficult, potentially more costly long-term, from a maintenance standpoint, because it's gonna take more effort to get around and confirm all these disconnections are there, more inspection of all these ponds. They're probably gonna need more yearly maintenance. Silt gets into these ponds, the silt has to be removed and dredged out.
Right.
So those are yearly considerations. The storm chamber still has to be inspected, but those are usually, whether those stormwater chambers work is they have an initial, one of the first chambers is like the sedimentation
It's for accumulation.
chamber, so that gets the accumulation first, plus these are coming from culverts, which would have already vetted out some of the sedimentation. So, and then the way those chambers work is you essentially have like a hole in the ground where you just throw your hose down and they suck out the sedimentation. So it's a more, it becomes more of a defined and clear maintenance program.
Right, and it's less impact on a number of properties.
That's true.
Because I think that no matter what, stepping back from being a legislative body here, for these folks, when you start to talk about, wetlands and, extracting silt on an annual basis, impact on what they can or cannot do in specific easement areas on their houses. You know, what's the pros and cons here in terms of impact as well as long-term viability?
I had this conversation with Brent, and, I initially wasn't a fan of the chamber system. I thought it was kind of a big design, right? It's like, hey, this is a really big design, it's expensive, and, it's a big project. And it felt like the initial considerations by the consultant were like, hey, here's a quick fix, right? Like, here's a 30% design. And I know that they've used that similar design in other projects across the state. And to be honest with you, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And I was like, I think there can be more consideration of the properties. I think there should be other options that are cheaper and easier. And so that was my desire to look at this, to make sure we were vetting all the other options. However, now that we've got this far, and I understand how that chamber system is gonna work, and even though it's more expensive, it seems to fall in line with, the tax assessment estimates that are there. That's obviously impactful to everybody, but, not like a ridiculous impact financially. And it can get done with the construction, and you get it done, and it's gonna be there and working, and it's one system that's shared and it's done. And while I like the idea of trying to do something that's maybe not as impactful from a big construction standpoint, smaller ponds all over the place and disconnection, I do think this is gonna be maybe a little more difficult, and it actually is gonna be impacting more people. I think people are gonna be driving around and seeing gravel wetlands, and it will have a different impact. People are gonna see it, and my heart was in this, cause I thought it was gonna be a better solution. I don't know if it is. And so, that's why I'm here. I just wanted to get that out there. I do feel for you though, because you're gonna be.
I'm not for this design, believe me. Dale Touchette, I do not want any wetlands in my front yard at all. That sounds absolutely ridiculous to me. You have your street plow guy thing. It comes through here, and I don't know why in the last few years, a lot of snow coming from the snow plow and from the street cleaning and whatever, my driveway is full from both ways. I'm 75 years old, I blow out my own yard. This is not what I want. Therefore, I don't want this stupid pond thing in front of my house. And that looks like a pretty big pond. Frogs are nice, yes, that's all good, a few, whatever you call those rotty things, but I don't want them in my front yard. So to me, it's not just me, I can see that there's a few other places here where it's going to be in the center of their property. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Tyler, I think.
Lee Beer, go ahead.
I think 2 and 3 are both conceptual, where number 1 is realistic. Because nobody's going to want wetlands in their backyard, or all these ponds around. Who's going to be responsible for taking care of these ponds? And how much is it going to cost? Is the town going to take the responsibility?
So the motion that was passed by the select board is, after installation, the town assumes responsibility for maintenance. So,
That's even on number 1?
Yeah,
Right.
That's the way we should go.
Yes.
Tyler, on this plan that you've got up with the ponds, aesthetically, what are they gonna look like? They're gonna be changing depending on whether we're in a rainy season or a dry season, right? In depth.
No, the way that the gravel wetlands work is that this, like a wetland, there's, wetlands always have water in them.
Mhm.
The idea is that a wetland is a wetland because the soils are wet the majority of the year. So it grows, so hydrant plants grow from them.
Okay,
And so that's the idea of how these are designed. Essentially, it's a controlled wetland where you do try to keep water in the soils, but you're not keeping water above the soil. So when stormwater runs into the wetlands,
Mhm.
the water does rise above the limits of the soils and the plants, but it slowly gets through them and out via orifices
okay,
to some sort of outlet structure or outlet pipe.
okay. And so aesthetically, do these need to be protected? Translation, the real question is, do you need a chain link fence around each of these or for
No, they usually,
protection of kids?
yeah, I mean, they're
or-
usually pretty shallow, and if somebody were to step in them, they're gonna get their boots all mucky and wet.
But not a drowning hazard?
Correct.
Okay, that's my concern.
They're not
No protection over
overly
little
deep,
kids.
and
Okay.
and they're shallow.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I have multiple questions, I'm not sure, but.
If you come up.
Kristen, yeah.
Come on up.
Just back question, for small, I'm Kristen, Fargo, Jersey Way. How shallow is shallow, because little kids could potentially drown in something that's fairly small. So I'm just curious.
Yeah, I guess I should have brought in detail what a wetland pond would look like, but the idea is that you do have some banks, usually at a 3-to-1 or 2-to-1 down a foot or two, and then it's a flat surface of wetland area, and that's usually, I think that's about 2 feet of like mucky soils, like a loamy, clayish based soil that can stay wet, and then underneath that is a more solid layer. It's like actually a gravel layer underneath that where there's some piping for under drainage. So, you have a foot or two down into a wetland, and then you have a foot or two of, wetland soils. And during a heavy rain event, there would be water above that level, maybe up to a foot or so. But there are overflow structures, overflow pipes that are supposed to limit how much water would ever get there in large storm events. So it's designed so it's not deep water, but it would depend on how each of these is designed and how much water we would control above the level of the wetland limit. Again, we are talking about wetlands, and it could end up that we find areas that are dry enough to just do dry basins. We did test pits behind Dale's house, and I think we found a seasonal high water table of 2 or 3 feet deep, which is not good enough for a dry infiltration basin. That triggers the need for a gravel wetland. So if we assume those are similar soils across the site, then we are looking at wetlands, but again, we wouldn't know until we dig the test pits.
And a gravel wetland, could you describe that? Is that what you just described?
Yeah, that's what we're talking
Okay,
about, yeah.
okay. Another question, since I'm up here, can I just ask all my?
Sure, absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay, in order to get to the 100% or the 50%, or ideally maybe more, as far as the state's concerned, do we have to do 2 and 3? Or are all of these trying to get to 100% of the?
Yeah, I mean, we started out looking at both of these options and hope that either one of them could work to get to the total treatment that we need, but, there's a chance that if we push this even further and try to find even more locations for ponds, that maybe this could become all we need and we don't need any disconnection. But right now, the way that we landed conceptually is this is up to 90% and this is up to
26.
26%.
Can you describe, this looks different than, these are easier to visualize. What is happening here?
Yeah, that's actually like an existing swale there. There's a pipe that comes out. So we're utilizing that. That would not be, the assumption is that could be an infiltration swale because it's sloped. And if it's flat enough and we can control it with a wide enough drainage area, then that qualifies for treatment.
And then, I think this is my last one. Could you, what is hard to follow on these is, these are really good for visualizing what it does to the neighborhood. This I'm having trouble with. So like, could you point out using this, where this is and how big it is?
Tyler, what page is she on, so we can get to?
She's back to the first page.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
Yeah, so that infiltration chamber is like right here. Okay, so what's happening is there's a pipe system.
Yeah.
And the pipe system comes around here and goes out. And so what we would do is we would intercept it and bring the water in. There's another pipe system going this way. And so we would bring a new pipe, we'd intercept that here and bring it in. And so this is the stormwater and then it has an overflow. The overflow goes back into this to get out, because you have to have overflow. So this area of those chambers, that's where it is. So in this option, that's the only construction that's happening on site is the area of this chamber and this pipe going out and this pipe going out. Basically, everything around Dale's house. Somebody got to buy Dale. Bottle of wine.
Is this square roughly to scale?
Sorry, what was that?
Is this roughly to scale?
Yes, yeah, I mean, that's roughly the area.
So
You
it's,
can see it. You know, so that's, like, that's a house right here. That's Dale's house kind of here.
yeah,
So it's the footprint of a house, it's large.
okay.
But it's about,
It's all in the ground, though.
it's underground. And so when it's done, it's gonna look the way it looks today.
Does this have soil over it?
Yeah, but it's very deep. The bottom, the entire bottom of that is 17 feet deep. So the construction is gonna be significant. It's a big hole. And there's layers, right? So there's the very bottom, there's a layer of stone for an underdrain system, and then there's a layer of sand, and then there's these chambers. These chambers are like half domes, okay? And then above the chambers, up to the ground is just fill. So they're gonna pull all the dirt out, stockpile it. They're gonna put the stone, the sand, and the pipes in, and then they're just gonna backfill.
And how long does Dale have to do that? Like, how long is the process?
That's a good question. I would estimate that all this work would get done in 2 to 3 months. I mean, it'd be a summer project for a few months.
So how far away from the woods, where the infiltration system is, how far away from that hill is the infiltration system going to be?
It's basically like where the toe of that slope comes down,
Okay, the foot of that.
where it becomes flat-ish.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We're almost like aspen trees or something.
Just beyond her garden.
Thank you for answering all those questions.
Good questions.
I would say that personally, I mean, I don't have a pond anywhere near my house or anything, but I agree with my neighbor that number one, I think it would make the neighborhood look not so great, and that's not great for all of us. And I definitely would not want anything that's sort of grandfathered into my property. I mean, I assume what that means is that you can't put on an addition, or if you do, it has to get approved by the state, so is that right? Like any
It
sort of-
could, yeah, something like that, that could be a restriction.
That just sounds like
That's a
a
good point.
logistical nightmare.
Yep.
So, how would you?
Tyler, the other piece of this too is that, you know, this chamber system is on property that Minash is looking to allow an easement to construct it on. So it's not, I mean, other than obviously, you know, the construction that has to take place to get to it, the facility itself is not in somebody's backyard, which they have to live with for the rest of their life.
Yeah, that's a good point. I agree with you.
Yes. No, go ahead.
I may be jumping the gun, but if I am, fine. Can you tell me to wait, we'll do it later. I'm trying to get the sequence of, we've got a 30% concept here in a couple of ways. Are we going to do 60% concepts or preferred?
No, I mean, honestly, I'd love to walk out of here with some direction. It feels like we're getting the direction.
Okay,
And I tend to agree with the direction we're getting to move forward with this.
okay,
But that's why we're here. We're in a,
okay.
We have a May 1st
we're in a line
deadline
of the woods here, and we gotta take one way or the other.
for 60% design completion. Now,
Okay.
that May 1st deadline might be able to extend it a month, but I start getting uncomfortable if we're extending something like the 60% because in June, we have June 1st, we have to secure a commitment from all affected landowners. So we'd have to, that's an easement, right? So when we start backing this up from May, we're getting into like, how is that going to impact further deadlines?
Another aspect is that, it's probably gonna be, easier, less effort for me to take this to 60% and 100% and get the permit, than it would be to continue flushing out the other options.
Yep.
So that would mean that there will likely be more, excess funds that are in, as part of the grant, that can go towards construction.
Okay, and then, obviously Brent's got, I mean, we've seen it, but Brent's babysitting it and working it, a long list of tasks that have to be done by certain deadlines. When do we get to the point of either submitting to this, let me start with the question, do we have to submit a plan to the state that's approved before we go out to bid?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, so it's 60% designs by May 1st, buy-in from affected landowners June 1st,
okay,
100% plans and submittal of the permit application to the state by September 1st.
The September 1st deadline has additional, there's no flexibility with that September 1st without potential penalties.
okay.
So that would
And then I
pass by.
can't remember, when's construction due, end of 26?
Construction, RFP for construction permitted stormwater, January 1st. Implementation updates, the first day of each quarter of the calendar, and then project completion, August 31st, 2026.
Thank you.
Just over a year.
Legal there. Once we, pay whatever you charge us, we're done with any easement or anything, we don't owe another dime?
So, again, I have to check on paying up front. It's the first time that question's been asked, but I think it's feasible.
Not only that is, we're all done if we pay it off. You gotta check on that, but we would not be responsible for anything else.
No maintenance, yeah. So, but you just mentioned easement.
Yeah.
Now, there will be lifetime easements for Menage, and then these underground additional pipes.
But also, my suggestion, I think it's gonna be a requirement of the state, is that any stormwater infrastructure pieces that contribute to this stormwater management system would have to be covered by easement, right? Because any piece of pipe in the ground that is contributing to the collection and treatment of the stormwater system has to be accessible for maintenance by the town.
Practically every one of the property owners there have utility easements already in your deeds. So I'd be working with legal counsel to make sure that, okay, does this section fall within those easements or do we need additional? So your question was a two-part. I can say that once you pay, whether it's upfront or over 15 years, the motion by the select board was that you're not responsible for maintenance. The easement is a more complicated question, it's more nuanced.
And do you want me to go up there?
Yes, please, just for those online and for the recording.
Not responsible for maintenance, what about when this has to be replaced? Also not responsible for that either?
Right.
That would be maintenance, yeah.
The hope is if we maintain it, we won't
Yeah.
have to replace it.
Yeah. Wally, I haven't seen you in 24 hours.
Just about, yeah.
Wally Reed, 70 Jersey Way. Just a quick comment and a thought. This decision needs to be made by the select board because they're the people responsible for this. And boards change, maintenance people change. The system number one is a phone call to a company that pumps things out, and they come and they take care of it and they go away. System number 2 and 3 are probably town employees trying to fix something every year that they may not be familiar with. We have great town employees, we have good boards, but that all changes over time. So think of your legacy and think of the people they're going to follow in those chairs, and what do you want to leave them for problems?
Thank you, Wally. Yep. It's a good thought.
Asked for and left you this, so.
That's true.
Brent, do we need, maybe this is a question for Tyler, but do you need us to take some action tonight? Do we need action by motion tonight?
Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong, if they made a motion on the 7th, would that be good enough for you to get your 60% design done by May 1st?
I guess I would say I don't know that you need direction from the select board to direct me on how to move forward.
I would prefer that.
I think that's up to you.
You have all 5 members.
Yeah, we're all here. That's,
No,
but
yeah, Richard's up.
What is, yeah, Richard did join. What does your agenda say for,
it says update on Jersey Heights 3-acre stormwater project.
Where's the calendar?
okay, all right.
So I guess the question is, can we do this?
It is an item, so you can make a motion.
All right.
Yeah.
If we,
It would be preferred, but otherwise, what are we waiting until?
you're looking for, no matter what, you're looking for direction on which of these 3 options, correct?
Yeah.
So I would suggest, let's make a motion. I mean, unless there's more comment from the audience, well, we can make the motion and still discuss it.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the best thing to do, is if I could get a motion and a second, then we can move forward with it. At least we know what it is we're talking about and what it is we might vote upon tonight. And since we're all here, that would seem to make sense, so.
Right, well, I would make the motion that we would move forward with a site plan design for the infiltration chamber plan to meet the requirements of the Jersey Heights 3-acre rural stormwater project.
So I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
So I got a motion by Chris and a second by George. And Laura and Richard, I want to welcome you into this discussion. Anything either of you would like to say at this point? Laura, go ahead.
No, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Richard? Richard, are you there?
Yeah.
Well, we'll give Richard, as soon as you get unmuted there, Richard, we'll let you chime in.
Just been put up.
Any, George or Chris, anything you want to add at this point?
I just, I don't want to assume anything here, but the temperature in the room says to me that option 1, of which I just made the motion on, seemed to be the most acceptable to everybody sitting here, both short-term and long-term. I just want to make sure that we're not assuming something by moving forward. So, speak now or forever hold your peace, or at least for the next couple of weeks.
George?
Yeah, I would agree with what Chris said, and I think Wally makes a very good point. I agree with it. This, the system, the infiltration chamber plan that we're proposing to explore further, seems to me to be the best long-term plan that we've got in front of us. As Wally said, probably better than I. The other one is a lot of yearly maintenance and unsightly collection areas of people's land, and it seems fraught with more risk than this plan does, so that would be my comment.
So I do have Richard Craig's response. He said he's good with the motion and he agrees with Wally's assessment.
While you have Richard on there, is he going to be able to vote on this?
Only by giving me direction.
Okay. I would just say, I mean, it seems pretty clear where the sediment is in the room and sentiment, not the sediment.
Sediment, yeah.
Sentiment.
No pun intended.
And no pun intended there. And I just want to say, in case this should happen quickly here, I just want to thank you very much for these different options. And I appreciate you throwing out the first option and very much appreciate you throwing out option number 3 for us and giving us something different to consider. I got to agree with Dale. If it was, I'm sitting here thinking about my front lawn and putting a wetland in there and
I mean, it's right beside the sidewalk, kids, dogs,
Yeah.
whatever.
the aesthetics of
They
it.
dump all the snow with the sidewalk, it's too full of snow. It's all dumped there, it's all wet, everything would be wet.
The long-term aesthetics issue is very important, and I'm glad everyone's here and had an opportunity to talk about this. Go ahead.
This is sort of building off of George's question earlier about the condition of the existing pipes underneath. And I don't know if this is a question or a comment, other folks may want to join in, but if you could turn to this, more of the site plan version, just in the sake of sharing information in case this is relevant, there are a lot of areas of the development where the drainage was never put in properly to begin with. And some of it has been shared with the town in the past, and understandably, the town has said, we don't have the money to deal with that right now. But one of them is here at the entrance. When we get any kind of large rain event, there is a gigantic puddle, like a foot deep more, that you basically have to drive through it.
On the road?
Usually will cover the entire road. And then.
So just real quick, are those the inlets that are like closer to the driveway for that new building, or is that near the inlets that are closer to the condos?
It's closer to where they built the new apartments.
Yeah.
It's almost across from that driveway.
I know what you're talking about.
There is a drain there, but when it's frozen, the water gets like.
I didn't design it.
Yeah, and even, sorry, I didn't,
So if anybody online didn't hear that, it's quite near the new driveway that was built by those condos.
It predates the condo.
Yeah.
It's been that way since.
Has it changed since the condos have gone in?
No.
Or have you had an opportunity to witness it yet?
No. Oh, yeah, it was just the other day, it was.
Yeah.
And it's not, doesn't seem to be always when it's frozen either, I mean, it's. I don't know what's-
So
anyway.
Kristen, is your question whether we can incorporate that into
Well,
the?
I guess it sort of is, or for the sake of being efficient with town time and money, I basically just wanted to raise it. The other area is here, it happens to be right in front of my driveway, but I'm really not complaining about it for that reason. What happens is it completely backs up. It's also very long, it's not as deep, but it's extremely wide. And it flows up to the point where then it runs down this sidewalk. And it is destroying this sidewalk for, anybody who has any mobility issues, because it, once it gets to a certain height, it just flows downhill, down that sidewalk. So those are the two areas that I'm aware of. I don't know if other people have, and maybe that's totally beyond the scope of this project, but I just thought you should know.
Thank you, Kristen. So, Wally?
The rate's a little too high. Yeah. But I know that problem on the road there, because I remember Kevin was looking at that last year.
So other input either from folks online, or I'll give the audience one more chance here in the room. Come on up,
Have
yeah.
you put it out to bid, actually?
So, we basically we sent this plan out to 4 different site contractors reputable site contractors, and we got 2 just lump sum bid prices back.
And if they come in under, then our costs would be less.
If they were to come in under, yes, but they've come in a little bit higher.
But what will happen is, those, and we told the contractors, like, you're kind of doing us a favor here by just giving us a price so we can understand what we're getting into. So once this is fully vetted, we get a permit in hand, we have final design plans, we'll go out to a more official bid process to get, official quotes, official bids from contractors in order to award the project. And that would happen next winter. Right, because we're gonna have to send out bids by January 1st, I believe.
Other comments in the room?
Oh, so it's not gonna start this summer?
This
No.
will not, no, so we're gonna.
The question was, will it start this summer? It will not.
Fall, and then go out to bid in the winter for construction in early summer 26.
Any questions, comments from folks online? Richard, I'm having a sense there's a vote coming up soon. I'm going to have to wait for you to call in to Judy.
I'll call him.
Any further discussion then? I'm going to just wait till Judy.
Hey, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, hold on.
So Laura and Richard, I will do a roll call. Okay, so I am going to then ask, we have a motion before us. I'm going to do a roll call and ask each of the board members to vote. George?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
Richard? That would be an aye, and that would be unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. You've got your direction you need?
Patience,
You're good?
I'm good.
Okay, thank you very much, folks. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Chris and a second by George. It is 7:12. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye. Oh, I need a, Laura?
Aye.
Lee. Folks, just hold on.
1 minute, guys, we gotta close the meeting
Yeah,
officially.
Tyler? Laura?
Aye.
Richard?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
That would be unanimous. Thank you very much, folks.
Donnie, one thing I think people should have thought